You guys know why we're making Angry Birds, right? Or like an Angry Birds clone in Unreal. It's I think it's important to have like a diverse set of baseline games so you guys understand that you can really make whatever you want. And Angry Birds is kind of like iconic because it is kind of a simple gameplay. But what makes Angry Birds a long-lasting game? Like, what is it about Angry Birds that gives it replayability?
It's very simple components can be rearranged in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, so levels, right? How many levels do you think Angry Birds has released in all of its incarnations? Like, probably thousands, right? If not more.
Per game, at least.
So this is kind of an avenue you can take, right? Where you make a game that has super simple mechanics, but you add content through the addition of levels that change how that gameplay is used. So Angry Birds has a very simple idea of a few different set of birds, but hundreds and hundreds of different level layouts. And they add replayability by giving you the chance to earn more stars on a level if you do better. If you use fewer birds and get more points in a level, you can get more stars, and being the ultimate goal to try to get 3 stars in each level. So what we're going to try to do today is I'm going to give you guys the basic gameplay mechanics of Angry Birds. So we're going to add the scoring, and we're going to add the mechanic for breaking apart the walls and enemies and shooting. And it's going to be kind of up to you guys for homework this week to make levels. So I'm going to give you guys the tools, and you guys are going to go and make the content for it. All right? So, and then next week we're going to do a space shooter, like a Galaga-style game in Unreal. So like a top-down shooter, which is kind of more a mix between mechanics and levels. But you know, you can do this with a lot of things. You don't necessarily have to add a lot of complex game mechanics to make your game interesting. Sometimes a game can be better if your core game mechanics are solid. If they're really fun at its core, then all you really need to do is give the player more of that, right? More levels to play with. Let them play in your mechanics. Like think about Portal, right? And Portal 2. More Portal 1 than Portal 2. Like Portal 1 had one gun, and maybe like the mechanic of being able to move cubes around a level, but their strength came in the level design. Like this is just like, their games are a hallmark of excellent level design, and with the story and the kind of quirky narrative that they had. So I think Portal just took the gun idea, they had an amazing mechanic, and they actually used that mechanic in a lot of different ways, which made you feel like you could have probably played, I know I could have played like 100 more levels with that same exact gun if they just gave me more interesting level design, right? Point being that there's a lot of people that make levels for Portal 2, you just download them and play them, and without adding any new mechanics, right? So that's why Angry Birds is kind of like a big, I don't know, it's easy to get into, the mechanics are simple to understand, but yet you yourself are getting better at the game, and the levels are changing and increasing in difficulty as you get better with them.
So it's like that saying that Emmerich says, keep it simple, stupid.
Like there are some games that have a lot of complex mechanics, and the level design is kind of like it helps those, but isn't really the pillar on which the game stands, right? Like StarCraft 2, I think, is a good example of something that lives and breathes by its mechanics and by its unit design, not necessarily by the levels, right? There have been ups and downs in tournaments where some maps, some levels that are made in StarCraft 2 are better or worse than others, but that doesn't make or break the game. In Angry Birds, if you had the mechanics but you had really, really bad and poorly designed levels, the game wouldn't be as fun as it is now. Which I haven't actually played Angry Birds in a long time. I kind of gave up after they started releasing like Angry Birds Star Wars and all the other Angry Birds Space. I didn't play. Yeah. All right, so you guys all made like a side scroller blueprint, right?
I did, yes.
Because
It's a 3D one, not the 2D one.
I was actually I originally did this in the rolling template, so I'm going to make this out of the rolling template, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to have you guys follow along anyway. We're not really, I could make this using a side scroller template too. The only reason why I like the rolling template is because it has a level in it that's kind of interesting. But don't worry about it if you use a side scroller. So it's fine if you did. I just wanted to make sure you guys know this is why I'm using the rolling one for the level, not for any of the actual gameplay mechanics. We're not using a rolling ball or the camera or anything like that. I'm not going to call it Angry Balls. What do I call it? What'd you say, Kai?
Angry Joe.
Angry Joe?
Yep.
Angry, angry Kai. Yeah, exactly. So there are, whenever I make a game for the first time, if I'm trying to make a clone or if I'm trying to make a new game, the most important thing that I've learned after like doing this for a while is it's so important to be able to take a game idea that you have and break that apart into manageable pieces, right? Like if you have a steak that you're trying to eat, you don't just shove the whole thing in your face. You take a knife and fork to it and you cut apart bite-sized chunks so you can actually eat it. In the case of making a game, if you think about Angry Birds, or even back to my original PowerPoint way back in last class about World of Warcraft, you have to be able to take the elements of a game and figure out what parts of the game have different mechanics and make those. So we're going to make like each part of Angry Birds separately and then combine them together. So Angry Birds is actually pretty simple, but when you try to figure out all the mechanics that go into it, it can be kind of overwhelming. Especially when you're making any kind of game, sometimes it's actually pretty overwhelming to try to figure out where to start. Like it can be confusing as far as like, what do I make first, right? And so I always like to start with the simplest possible thing, because I think it's hard to like get started making a game, but once you kind of get started, you're kind of motivated to finish it. So I like to do something like simple and that's rewarding and easy to do at first. So this is just for showing you guys, this is the rolling ball template. So you basically have a ball. None of this stuff I'm using anyway, but yeah, you get this ball that you can roll around. Yeah. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete most of this stuff. I'm going to delete. Don't need this.
Make that round.
This thing is actually just multiple meshes.
Is there a simple way to get an arc like that?
I don't think they did anything special. I think they just placed them. I don't know. They used to be a spline tool, but I think they just literally placed this themselves.
You did that by hand.
Yeah. Gotta be artists. I want to be careful not to delete the player start here. I'm just cleaning up the level first.
I bet you could set up. Like
I actually deleted the floor.
That will make ramps for you, right? If you base it upon like a matinee or not a matinee.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point. You could probably do that.
So you can get that arc going with the matinee for 2 points, right?
Yeah, I'm actually going to build lighting because like this, the shadows kind of bother me. By the way, building lighting typically takes a while. I only ever do it like once and then try never to touch it again. It's gotten faster, but it's still kind of a pain. All right. So now we have our plain, clean level, and I kind of want to have the camera be able to be moved. I want to have the camera be the first thing that I make. Before I do anything else, I just want something that I can move left and right, and it'll let me move something in the level that has a camera attached to it. All right? So we're going to start off by making a new character. And I think since I'm on 4.4 with you guys, I don't think there's an option. Yay, tutorials. Yeah, there's no option to make stuff here. So we're going to make it the old-fashioned way. So are you guys following along, by the way? Hopefully you are, because I need you guys to do this as well. So we're going to make a new class blueprint. This is going to be our character. And all the character does in our game is move the camera. So like A and D is going to be responsible for moving the character left and right, and that's going to be where the camera is. We're going to make a new class blueprint. We're going to make it based off a character. Okay. As long as you're watching, I'm sure you'll be able to catch up. So,
You're going to upload these videos too.
So make a character. I'm just going to drag that window on here, so I got these both here. And if you look at the components, it has a set of components for character movement. This is kind of the important bit. This is what lets you move this blueprint left and right when you hit A and D. We're going to hook that up in just a second too. Capsule component, this isn't strictly necessary. We don't really have a reason for this other than keeping the player on the ground, but we'll keep it as is. And we don't really have a mesh either. I will add a camera though. So if you go to add component, and you guys can add a camera. I'm going to name it camera. You don't really need to do anything. You don't need to position it. Just add a camera component. Don't rotate it or anything like that. And compile. And I just want to test that this thing gets created in the level with the camera at the right position. So going back to my example map, go to your blueprints folder and you should find a game mode for your project. It might not be called rolling game. It might be called like side scroller game. My game, yeah. Just double click on that guy and go to the defaults tab. And where it says default pawn class, instead of whatever's currently there, assign the blueprint that you made. So this will be your character. This basically says when you press play, create one of these guys at the spawn point. Okay. So this is the blueprint that I just made.
Did you show the blueprint again?
Yeah, all I did was add a camera. I literally just added a camera.
Oh.
So if you go to the blueprints folder, there's going to be a game mode. It might be called like my game. And then in the default pawn class, find the one that you created, the character that you created. All right. So I'm just gonna, that's all I'm gonna do for now. And I'm gonna play. And hopefully, if I did it right, I should spawn in a level. And I won't be able to move, but I will see something like that. So you'll see the camera kind of at the spawn point for the player.
Lower than normal.
Yeah. You shouldn't have a mesh anymore. So you shouldn't have a blue dude running around if you guys are using the side scroller template, and you shouldn't have a ball running around if you're using the physics one. Cool. So let's set up some inputs, because I'm trying to hit, I want A and D to move the camera left and right, because that's how we're going to use our scrolling. And maybe if you make an Android version of this, you want to have the touch controls do this too, or maybe you have a controller hooked up. Either way, what we want to do is we want to create a set of inputs so that we can move the player left and right. So I didn't really show you guys this 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to go into it a little bit more in depth today. Kind of like in Unity you define your inputs on a per game level. So with this project that I made here for Angry Kai, which I think I called it, it comes with a set of inputs that it responds to. So these are kind of outside of Blueprint, but we're going to edit them anyway. So if you go to the Edit menu and go to Project Settings, I want you to go down to the Engine category and click on Input. And this is where you're going to be creating any keys that you want to bind to things that happen in your game. Now, that being said, you don't have to use this system if you just want to handle key presses yourself. But this is important. Let's say you have like a 360 controller plugged in, right? A 360 controller has like an analog stick, right? And the analog stick actually is not just, hey, I pressed up. It actually tells you you pressed up, and here's how hard you pressed up, right? So this here, these axis mappings, not only give you the ability to tell when they've pressed a key that says, hey, I want to move to the right, but also that they've actually, how much they've pressed in that direction, okay? So if you expand axis mappings for your guy, you should see a move right. I think you only see like a 1 in your game. But you should see something similar, A and D. But you'll see also other things like gamepad, left stick right and gamepad. You might even see right and left arrow keys. So what this is you can add any number of these that you want. And I'm actually going to remove this one. And you basically give it a name. You can add any custom name that you want, like move in some wacky direction. I don't know. I'm just don't add this. I'm just doing this for the sake of example. And what you do is you add every key that you want to possibly respond to that behavior. So notice here move right has not only D for actually moving to the right, but it has A as well but notice that it has a scale of -1. So what happens is you press A, and it actually will take the input and reverse it for you. Yeah.
How does it know what axis to apply that value to?
You tell it. I'm going to show you how it uses that text. All this gives you is whether they're pressing right, whether they're pressing D or A. Not necessarily. You actually have to set up the code to actually move them to the right.
Okay.
If you wanted to, you could actually have it so that D and A move you up and down or forward and backwards.
Yeah, because I'm seeing how you can apply negative or positive value. I'm just wondering how it picks which value in X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
That is.
So notice here that it actually has gamepad left here. This is going to be a value between 0 and 1, actually between -1 and 1 of how much in X. So as I press the analog stick left, that's going to be -1, and this is going to be +1. And in between those two is going to be an infinite number of values between -1 and 1. So if you wanted to support multiple targets like Android or web or keyboard and mouse or controller, this is kind of where you set up all of your inputs and all of your bindings. For our simple Angry Birds game, we're only going to really need one set of inputs for whether we're moving right or left for the camera. And then there's a bunch of other inputs that you can add for one-time events. So the difference here is that these axis mappings, these will fire constantly. So they basically say all the time they will return a value, whether you're hitting D or A or right or left, while these action mappings are basically one-time things that happen. So look at the action mappings here for jumping. You see how it says not only spacebar, but face button bottom, which is going to be A on the 360 controller, the green button, or touch 1, which is just going to be a tap with one finger. And then you can add modifiers here, say, hey, you have to hold down Shift, Control, Alt to jump. Maybe you want them to hold down 4 keys to jump for whatever reason. That's basically the modifiers you can add here. And so what this actually translates to is that for each one of these that you add, let me show you something kind of cool. My little axis mapping. I'm going to add one of these guys here called My Little Axis Mapping. For each one of these things here in this list, along with action mappings, they will show up in your blueprints for you to be able to connect to. So these will cause events to fire in your blueprints that you can connect to. So notice here I have a move right and a My Little Axis Mapping. No, I'm just showing you guys this for example. You should already have one for moving right. That's all you really need. So go to your character blueprint. I want to make sure I'm not playing. Okay. Yeah, so go to your character blueprint and right click. Oh, why is this a read-only graph? Oh, because I'm playing right now. So right click, and if I type My Little Axis Mapping, you see how it shows up in this list here because I added it in those preferences. So I can connect to that. So instead of My Little Axis Mapping, which is just my test, look for Move Right. You're going to see two different things that you can hook into. One is the event that happens. It gets called every frame and tells you how much they're pressing that Move Right button that you assigned. So this little guy gets fired constantly, right? So if I drag this off, and I'm just going to do this as a test, add one of these guys to your level, but I'm just going to have this thing go to a print string. I'm just going to drag this in here. Don't do this. I'm just going to show you what this actually looks like in game. So when I play, look at the numbers on the left here. I'm pressing what right now? It's left, yeah? What am I pressing now? Right, and see how as I'm going between the two, it's cycling, right? I don't know if this is going to work if I do this while it's playing. But if I plug in my 360 controller.
So the cool thing with the gamepad is you can actually get values between those.
Yep. I don't know if this is going to work, by the way. I might have to restart Unreal.
So is that how you get force?
Whoa.
Yeah. So I am pressing partway through. I'm not all the way on the right. Now I'm all the way on the right.
Why does it jump at 2?
So Unreal's mappings for analog sticks starts off kind of at 1. It doesn't. It assumes that you want to have. It gives you a little bit more aggressive movement controls, so you can support like walking and running by default. So here I'm actually only pressing slightly, and there's kind of a dead zone here. But notice here I can actually control values in between those two, right? Okay. So as I'm pressing left and right on the analog stick, it does that. So what we can do is we can use this value, which is what's getting with the blue text here, to control our character. So I'm going to delete this guy here. And I'm going to drag a wire off here. Actually, let me make sure I have it. Yeah. I want you to drag a wire and search for add movement input. And this is a function specific to characters and pawns. Note that if you try to do this on a pawn, it won't work. It only works on characters. So make sure that when you create your blueprint for your player, that is actually derived off a character. What's that, Kai? Target is pawn. Where does it say that? Does it say in the top right, Kai? Does it say parent class character? Okay, then you're fine. Then it's fine. Target is pawn is fine. As long as this thing up here says character, it'll work. If this thing up here says pawn, that won't work. Okay. All right. You guys able to add this and connect those two? So there's going to be two things we need to feed in to this function. So this value here that I printed out, it was -1 when I was pressing left. And it was 1 when I was pressing right. Or 2 and -1 if I was using the controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug this guy in here into the scale value. And all this scale value is saying, hey, I will multiply whatever direction you give me by this. Okay? And what I can do here now is I can pass in a world direction. I want to figure out whether I want to move, in what axis do I want to move here, X, Y, or Z. And so if I look here, I'm moving this guy along Y right now. So this is the player start. So I'm going to control my movement here in Y. And you're going to kind of have to pass in a value that's higher than 1 here. And I can do something like 200. And compile and save. If I play, now I can use left and right keys, and I can use the analog stick to move slower or faster. Yeah. It's kind of hard to tell. But you should have something like this where the character is able to move. Are you guys able to get that too? Character can move? You might need to speed it up a little bit too. Maybe 500. Oh, I didn't compile. Let's try this. I'm not sure that this is actually scaling it correctly. Should be. I want to say that it's actually not scaling it to the right. Okay, so it didn't use. This is also slightly different than what I had before. You normally could have typed in something here, but I actually want to speed this guy up. So instead of just putting in, if I typed in like 1 million here, it doesn't seem to do anything. As far as this is just telling me what direction I want to move. If I want him to actually move faster and slower, what I can just do is take this value that I'm getting from here and multiply it by some other value. So right now I'm plugging it directly into scale. So instead, try dragging a wire off of this guy and just multiply. And you're going to do a float times a float, because I just want to bring this guy up a little bit faster. And in here, I'm going to type in like 20 and try scaling up the movement here. So he'll maybe move 20 times faster. There is going to be a limit to how fast he can move. You know, it might be just because his character is not set up correctly. I'm going to try something crazy. Yeah, it looks the same to me too. It might be because this guy here has a maximum move speed. I think that's the only thing here. Yeah. Oh, because he's only set to walk 600 units per second. So if I do that, that'll probably make it way faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Acceleration's weird though.
Yeah, it can be accelerated. So if you go to the character blueprint and go to the components tab, click on character movement, that component there, and scroll down until you see a bunch of properties related to movement. You can speed up their walk speed and their acceleration here.
So what should we put on to?
I don't know, kind of just pick something that feels right for your level size. 1,000 for acceleration.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Get from one side of the screen to the other.
Yeah, I think that works. I don't want to spend like all the time on this. This is just going to be the camera. It doesn't even necessarily need to be in our game. We could just pull our spawn point back a bunch, and we could probably see most of the level. But I'm gonna keep it as is because I like having something in the level. Actually, this is a spawn point here. Where's this guy?
Should add one to move up and down.
What's that?
Should add it so to move up and down. But not in like Z.
That's a good idea. Well, maybe we'll do that afterwards. Okay, so everyone have something that at least moves left and right, right? We are going to now make the actual physics pieces. So you guys that have already made your levels, you should already have a blueprint for this, but I don't yet, so I'm going to make it right now. I'm going to basically use a cube. It can be any cube that actually has physics on it. So pick a mesh in your game. It might be under like shapes. You can pick any of these shapes as well. This one is just kind of a rounded cube, so it looks nicer. I'm going to make a blueprint off of him. I'll call this a wall. Let's just do a couple things first. So there's my wall component. Let's give it a material, because I know that there is a material I can use. There's a static mesh with a default material. If I go down to rendering, I can add an element for it. And you can just pick a material from this list. I happen to know there's like a gold one that I can apply to it. So I'll use that. You guys should already have a mesh in your levels that kind of does this. There's nothing special about this guy except we are going to turn on physics for him. And we're going to also enable him to receive hit notifications so that he knows when our angry Kai that we shoot, oh Kai, I need to get a texture of you so I can put it on the ball. I'm
Snap
totally
a picture of his face real fast.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do that, Kai. Kai, can you email me a selfie of you?
Don't worry, I'm gonna put my face on.
I wanna put your face on the ball in the game.
Drop it on Zool.
Yeah, put it on Zool. I will use it.
How do I add,
Material?
no, it doesn't material.
Could add that team shade.
You have to ask me what you want
I know.
to add before I can answer your question.
Why can't you just know what I want? How do I, the words are failing me. How do I make it so that it'll move when I hit it? Movable?
This thing?
Oh,
Oh, you're right. So you have to check this checkbox,
Okay.
simulate
that's
physics.
okay.
And also, while you're in there, can you please check this checkbox too? Simulate generates hit events. This is important because we're going to be using the, yeah, it's right below it. We're using hit events to determine not only that something hit us, but how hard the thing hit us. Because that's going to be the other goal of our game, is that the balls are going to be hitting the wall, but we don't want it to just automatically destroy them. Angry Birds has like a threshold for how hard you have to hit things. By the way, the physics engine in Angry Birds, Box2D, the guy that wrote that physics engine is the principal engineer on our team. So, yeah, Aaron Cato is sits right next to me, and he works on physics in our game too. So,
I have a question.
yeah.
So with this object and it has physics on, and you hit simulate, it's going to drop and it's going to hit like the floor and bounce around, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted it to, let's say, maybe hit the player, but not hit the floor, but you want your player to be able to walk through it.
Hmm.
Would you set up that?
Yeah, you can set up collision presets for some of that stuff. So if they're exposed here, like you can say, hey, right now, notice how the collision responses are blocked for everything, but you can set it to just overlap the player and not block him, so you can tell in that case.
Now, can you, I noticed it has like just a bunch of presets for specific things, but like what if you were to add a custom blueprint that you wanted it to go through? You know, like
Yeah, it's not really, I think you'd have to add it in code at that point, because like as far as I know, there's no way to, you can specify custom collision here, but it's either, like these are the collision groups, so you have to fit it. It's not like in Unity, you know, where you get the layers. You can apply like layer intersection. There's no such thing, unfortunately. So, not yet anyway. Yeah. So you'll either have to make it a pawn or some other dynamic thing. So
yeah, you could just make it when you make the class blueprint. You could just make it a pawn and it will fall under that class, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of limited in that way, but it's always been that way in Unreal, which kind of sucks. So yeah, any kind of complex collision rules, like you want to make an Ikaruga style game, you would have to do all that collision detection by yourself, like all the resolving of the collision by yourself, which is, I think, fine. So, right. So does everyone have a blueprint for their mesh and physics are enabled? You should see this thing. It should fall when you click simulate. Does anyone not have this? Okay. All right. Now that I have my blueprint, if it's not falling, Kai, make sure you've enabled physics. This simulate physics checkbox here. Yes. And don't forget, please check simulation generates hit events. You need this one too, because otherwise you will not get hit events. And then when you ask me, why is my hit event not firing, I will ask you, did you check that checkbox I asked you to check 3 times? So this is the important one. This is really weird though to me, because I feel like this should be on by default. The fact that this is off is more of a performance optimization, but it kind of sucks because you'll be making blueprints and you'll forget to check this guy. Yeah, I know. But in a lot of cases you don't necessarily care, and this can be expensive. But I don't know. I just feel like for game prototyping it doesn't make sense to leave that thing off. Right, so I'm going to take my wall, and I'm just going to put a couple of these guys in a level. Make something simple. That doesn't look like super stable. Let me just move some of these things over. You know, these things are kind of thick too. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale them down a little bit. So I'm going to go to my wall here. And I kind of want these things to be smaller and thinner. And I could just go in and scale each one of these guys individually. But I want these things to be like Angry Birds style walls. So I'm actually going to set up the scale in here. So remember, you cannot scale the root. If you want to scale something like a mesh, you have to attach it to something. So I'm going to add a scene. Call it the root. And I'm going to make this guy the root instead. And I'm going to just scale this guy down. That seems good. Yeah, that's better. And maybe I have another one of these guys. Or maybe I could just scale that guy up actually. You guys already have levels set up, so this should be cool. There's my Angry Birds levels. Best level ever. We're just going to move this guy a little bit closer too so I can see more. Okay, so we have a blueprint with a wall in it. No matter what it kind of looks like, the functionality of it is going to be the same. So let's do that. Um, let's actually, before we get to the part where we actually try to destroy this guy, I think what we need to do is we are going to set up something that launches the actual birds, or Kai, as soon as he uploads his texture of his face. It's in Zool.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Did you just have that with you?
Yep.
Alright.
Why does it say contact the nearest PLA military relations office?
There's no.
Name Fat Zuan Mian? That's not you.
That's me.
Oh yeah? How do you pronounce your middle name?
Yes, that's all.
Kai, I'm taking your picture and I am going to Photoshop it onto a ball in our game. So I'm not good at Photoshop. Just
256 by 2.
please don't judge me based on my Photoshopping ability. I know that there's.
So much better.
I'm going to do this. Kai, I am cutting out your head. Oh my god, I'm already screwing up. Gotta get your ear. I know there's a way you can go like free. Isn't there like a button to go freeform while you're doing this? Right, so control. Make this thing like. Oh my god. Content aware. That's not good.
Gotta make it a perfect square back then.
Yeah, I'm gonna just do this and just. Just want to crop you. See, shortcut for crop. Crop.
Just
Nope.
hit enter. Should crop it.
Does it? No.
Just press C.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. You're getting saved. PNG on my desktop. It's totally gonna be worth it. Trust me. Okay. So now, non-power of 2? Okay, we gotta make you a power of 2. God.
Just do 256 by 256.
No way, man. You're getting 512 treatment.
512.
Is it worth the extra?
Is it worth? Oh, okay, maybe. I don't know. Now we're losing some integrity here for from scaling. Okay. Oh, why did you not save as? You're hungry?
Yeah.
Once we get a little bit further, I'll let you guys take a break. But we just started,
The
so.
giant purple. He looks like he has a bruise on his face with a giant purple mark in the middle of his screen.
They could be Chinese. It's a birthmark.
What's with these artifacts in the back? Oh, because I didn't set this thing up to be alpha.
Whoa.
That's kind of weird.
Don't want any blanks.
I think the this kind of thing is actually not.
I thought you had to make sure that it was transparent.
I thought it was transparent.
What did you save it as?
Save the PNG.
Yeah. No, I mean in the actual engine.
Yeah, I didn't give me an option when I imported this thing, so
I thought it was under.
let's see here. Huh. Yeah, we might just have to leave it. I'm not sure because it usually is just like I compress without alpha. I thought it's usually this guy here, but
Let's try to save as a target at 32.
yeah, maybe we'll try one more thing and then we'll try this Targa. It may handle it better. I'm surprised you have that image already.
What?
I'm surprised you have an image all ready to go. It looks a little better. Okay. So let's make the thing that we're going to launch. So this thing came with a physics ball, but we're going to make our own physics ball. So make a new blueprint, and this time it's going to be a blueprint for just a class blueprint from an actor. And I'm going to name mine Kai, because I'm going to put Kai's face on a ball and shoot him at walls. And pick a prop that's a sphere, either like the material sphere or a shape. Probably a sphere shape is probably the best thing. There happens to be already a mesh I can use here, so I'm going to click that. I don't know how this thing is UV'd, so let's just assume that it's going to work well. I'm going to create a material from him. Weird. Sample type is color. No texture sample. Sample type is color. Yes. Perfect. All right.
You put it metallic.
Oh.
We have all kinds of cool options.
Or like you gotta put a caustic to the metallic.
Oh, you mean up here? I wish I could just drag.
They don't have a normal map of it. Like a normal copy.
And it's like a one or something like that.
So you think make him shiny?
Yeah. If it becomes super shiny, it'd be like 15.
I can also add some roughness to him.
Oh yeah, it becomes roughness, never mind. And then
Oh man, you're super shiny. Okay. We're spending a lot of time on this.
you have to get Kai.
Can't even see him anymore.
I'm going to give you 0.9. I don't think you need to be that shiny.
I think it's the metallic is too high or something like that.
That's fine. It's fine as is, I think. He's special, so. Okay, so there's the ball. Let's actually put the material on the ball. Okay. Next gen right here. Right, so this thing is also going to be a physics object, so make sure that on your ball you have simulate physics checked. And the simulation generates hit events. This also needs to be checked. So both of these things should be checked true. Okay. So now we have the ball that we're going to launch. We need something to actually launch this guy. So we're going to make a blueprint for the launcher now. So now make another class blueprint. I'll call this one the Kai launcher. I'm actually going to make it look slingshotty, because there's a way you can do that. So I'm going to make this thing look slingshotty. You guys can make this look however you want to. How it looks doesn't really matter. But if I go to the shapes, there are like this pipe here. I can grab that guy, put him in the level. Make sure you have a root that is a scene. So I have a mesh here, that's the pipe, and I'm going to pick another one that's going to be the stand, like that. So I'm going to take this guy and rotate him this way. This guy can get rotated this way. snap. Okay. Cool. The golden launcher. Okay. The other key bits to it, these things aren't really going to do anything special. They're just there for visuals, but we will add a special point that's going to be where the balls spawn from. So I'm going to have you add another scene component. So add just another scene to your launcher and call this one spawn point. This one is the important guy that you should actually name specially. Okay. How you guys doing on here?
Just so you know I'm not following anymore.
Oh, why not?
I'm just trying to keep my energy to stay away.
Oh, really?
I redo the projects anyways.
Okay. Do you guys want to take a break and come back?
No, you can keep going. I'm just reserving my energy.
Okay.
So, hey, so-
I'll just send it to
So
you.
this
I
is
just want to
just a
wash.
normal class route after.
There's homework based on this stuff that we do in class. So, yeah. This is so this isn't a normal class blueprint. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
based on
I
active.
haven't.
All you really need.
lost in the last section, so
Yeah.
I'm just making my first shot.
Yeah, I just spent some time just making these things to make it look like a launcher.
So this blueprint launcher.
Yeah, I just call it BP_launcher. We haven't done any like real blueprint work yet. So all we've really done so far is just set up meshes and put Kai's face on stuff.
Where are your shapes? There you are.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this happen. Make it all pretty. Are we on break?
Sure. Let's take a break. I think it's good to take a break here before we actually get into the blueprint stuff.